Welcome back to the Bass Capital Radio podcast. I'm your host, Lara Wallace, and today I am joined by Mr. Ken and Miss Janice Mahaffey. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you.
We appreciate the offer to be here with you.
Absolutely. It is really my honor. I have shared with you guys, as our audience knows, that I am on a mission to capture much, if not all of the history in Putnam County. I have a chore ahead of me, and I'm looking forward to that. And I think you share the appreciation for the rich history this community has too. So I couldn't think of better guests to be with me today.
Thank you.
Absolutely. You guys are lifelong residents of Putnam County. You have been a lifelong resident, but we're going to find out your story before I get the honor of knowing all the things that you've learned along the way here. So we'll start with you, Ken. How did you end up in Putnam County?
Well, I had graduated from University of Florida, go Gators, and and I was looking for some place to work, and I was given a job, and I just didn't appreciate what they were doing and all, and I just kept changing jobs and all, and I worked on nuclear power plants and all these sophisticated things, but it wasn't what I wanted. So I just one day got in my truck and started driving, and I knew Florida better than anything, so that's what I just headed for Florida, and I knew the land because that's where my grandparents lived. So
Okay.
I started in that area because I really liked that area. And
Beautiful area.
yeah, just a bit beautiful. And my great grandmother lived there. My grandmother lived there. It was just family.
Right.
And so as I was driving around, I saw some signs and all for Palatka. And I said, well, I've heard people talk of Palatka. So it's time for me to visit too. So I went through and visited, and I said, I love the entranceways into the beauty of the trees and just the calmness that everything was going on there. There was nothing really busy, but it had something special about it. Now, I can't pinpoint what it was, but it's something that I enjoyed. So I just kept going. Put this top in my place and did some more searching and all, but I kept going back to Palatka, and I finally met some people there. I decided sort of maybe I could settle down there and find some place to go to. And a friend of mine was working for the 40-pound light too, but we didn't know each other as FP&Lers, but and so he was looking for a roommate. So that worked out really nice, and from there I met other people, and these were my age people, and it was just a good fit for all of us. I think we were all looking for niceties that we needed around us and all. And of course, I just, again, fell in love with the beauty of Palatka and the surrounding area, the waterways. I love to canoe.
Perfect place for you then.
I like to hike.
And
they had all the trails. I said, I think I found the place that I want to live. And
I like it.
So it was something that sort of excited me because I was making major changes in my life that I never had before. And so I just finally found a roommate, had the roommate and everything, and they had common friends that allowed me to be part of their friendships and all too. So it
brought you in the circle.
And that was unusual for me. I was not always that type of person, But some of us love to do all these things together, the hiking, canoeing, all this stuff. So a couple of us got together and said, I need a job to begin with.
Sure.
So I'm in a new place. I've got to have a job. So I talked with some of these friends of mine, and we discussed these things that, well, what do you want to do? What do I want to do? And all night I started talking about. I said it'd be nice to have some canoes and be able to take people out and all. Well, we discussed it for a while because again, new job,
Yeah.
supposedly, and we were able to round up some older canoes and all, and we decided we were just going to do weekend trips for people and all.
Okay. Yeah.
And we tried it a couple of times, and really it was fun. It was one of those things, you get out, you go so far, then you jump up and build a fire and put the stuff together so you can cook dinner and things of that order. And of course, I was a cook too, so it was one of those things that. But we would sit down and we finally decided, what we want to do. Why don't we do this as a business?
Yeah, make money off of having fun.
See if we can make money off of it. So, and so we got it together and we talked about what do we want to name it, and we came up with Southern Wilderness Adventures.
I like that. That's got a nice ring to it.
The name of the business that we went to and got. I don't know what you do and what they do anymore for trying to say that name and all. So, but we did that. And we actually got a brochure done and all. We
made it official.
Well, we were all sort of professional. I mean, we had all gone through all their education and everything.
Right.
So some of us were just very helpful for us, even though they were helping us, but they didn't want to be part of it.
Oh,
they didn't want to.
Yeah.
So we just ended up with this and put the brochures out. We actually advertised. This is which I said we can't afford it. We can't afford it. National Geographic.
Seriously?
The first thing we did was advertise in National Geographic.
Wow, you went big.
Yeah, real big. The wallet got reduced, but we actually even had one parent call us, flew their son down to Jacksonville. We picked him up, and he was one of our first clients.
From National Geographic.
From National Geographic.
Did you know you're going to marry somebody famous out of National Geographic?
But it was unusual for us. I mean, just to do that.
Yeah.
But it was fun, interesting. The people enjoyed it. We give them history. We give them information on the rivers and all this other stuff. And so we tried to make it not necessarily entertaining, but educational.
Right.
It was a major thing for us to make sure people walked away understanding the importance of our waterways and our trails and our forest and everything. And so we ended that first big bang with a big breath of fresh air. We said, wow, we actually accomplished something.
Right.
We says, now we got to think about how we do this all the time.
Right, exactly.
So, and it was just one of those things, getting our name out. I wish I had brought one of my brochures with, because we had an artist that was a friend of ours that designed the folders and all for us, and they were just he was a quality person that was loose on the ends.
Now I have to ask, forgive me for interrupting, but is that how you guys met, Miss Janice? Or
we met over at the one of the head honchos.
Okay.
Because I was friends with them.
Oh, that friend group worked out for you both.
Yes.
So, question, if I might. Now, were you raised in Putnam County, or did you meander here?
My mother was raised here, and when she married my father, he was in the Navy, and in fact, they got married the day before Pearl Harbor.
Wow.
So every day that he went out, he didn't know if he was coming home that day. But and then whenever he got close to retire, I was born in Virginia, and Mama wanted to come back to be with her sister and family and friends. So we moved back to Palaca. And I was in the first grade and started at Samatia School when it was a 2-room, four class school.
Oh, wow.
And
That was in San Mateo, East Palaca.
right at the corner of 100 and East End Road.
Oh, okay.
And and then the next year, second grade, I went to the old Browning Pierce School.
Right.
So I was a Browning Pierce
Me too.
student.
Yes. Go Bears. That's it.
Yeah.
You had to
But
do
we
your
didn't have mascots in my day.
That's a funny thing to think about. I didn't know that mascots were not a part of the school system.
No.
We'll have to do a little.
We did education.
How dare you? I have to go back and find when the mascots came to be about. That'll be another podcast. How
Right.
we ended up with the Bears and the Panthers and such. But so you had roots in DeLand, and you had roots in Palaca.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent. And how old were you? I meant to ask that. How old were you when you came here, Ken?
When I came here, I would have been
25.
3 years out of college. So I graduated in the 70s. So,
You were about 25.
but yeah.
And you were about 5.
Yeah.
So obviously
Now
not.
they have thoughts about me.
Yeah, I know, right? Not at the time you got together, but when you
Right,
moved here.
right.
So, and were you interested in? So obviously you attended Browning Pierce
Mm-hmm.
and the high school. Which high school did you go to?
I went to South. That was the first year that we had South and Central. Was my senior year, 1970.
So Central Academy, right? And then South.
It was Palaca Senior High School,
Right.
and then they changed it to Palaca South,
Okay.
and then Central Academy became Central
Mm-hmm.
High School, Palaca
Okay.
Central.
Okay, I did not know I made that transition. See, I'm already learning things. So, and when you graduated, you obviously went to school at UF, and to your point, go Gators. And that's a trend. Anytime somebody says I went to school at UF, go Gators is the next sentence. They've trained you well. Where did you do with life after high school?
Well, I went to Florida State because it was
okay.
yes.
Okay, a
And-
house divided.
right one week a year, and the reason why my parents lived too close to college, and and they would have to call me if I was in Tallahassee to see if I was there, so I would have a little bit of a pre-warning.
Oh, okay. You at least got a heads up.
I had a little warning. But
And what'd you go to school for?
I majored in art history,
So history is like deeply ingrained in you.
Renaissance art.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, I had-
And what'd you go to school for?
I went to school to college.
Yes, sir.
I went to college to. I wanted to get into some field of science and all, and I went
So
to
arts and science.
went to Florida State my first year.
Okay, so you can honor a little bit of her
right,
heritage
yeah.
there.
And at the end of the first year,
Mhm.
as we were leaving, they says, "We hate to tell y'all, but we're closing this this program,
Department, yeah, program,
the program, and it won't be offered this next year." So I says, "Okay." So I get on the phone and I called University of Florida and I says, "Can you send me information regarding these different aspects of
Right.
So I got the information all together and I went through them, and I ended up looking at the building construction department.
Okay.
I had not
Right.
my history.
Yes, yeah.
It got me involved in high school with the construction aspect and all, because the department, one of the departments they did a lot of training for seniors that weren't going to college, but I was going to college. But,
Okay.
but I wanted to see what they had to offer.
Oh, that makes sense. Yeah.
And so I said, saw that they had the building construction department.
Right.
I said, went there. I did all this myself. Didn't tell anybody what I was doing or anything. And so when school opened up, we were in quarters. Uh,
That's how I remember it, in quarters. Yeah.
I told my mother, I said, "Oh, by the way, here's my new address." She says, "What do you mean my new address?" I said, "Oh, I meant to tell you, they took my program away, and so I've signed up at University of Florida." After she had said, "None of my children will ever go to the University of Florida
You're
again."
the black sheep now.
Well, but it all worked out.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because it was something I enjoyed doing. I made some of my lifetime friendships there at University of Florida, and it was just an opportunity for me to delve into something I really want to do. And I thought I wanted to be an architect, but I backed away from that.
Yeah. I thought I wanted to be a veterinarian, and here I am doing this, and I'm thoroughly pleased.
But I just enjoyed going through the construction and all of the very interesting things. That I said probably the one thing that I was most proud of after in my fourth year was going through surveying. I got to take surveying class and become certified as a surveyor.
Okay. Yeah.
And one thing what was it? How was I getting off on this story?
I get on tangents all the time.
Yeah.
We'll talk about the construction because we've got there's architects that we've had in town, and so you have the ability to go anywhere with that career.
Right.
And I want to take a step over to Miss Janice and ask her a quick question. We'll come back to that because I'm interested to see how you transition from that to the kayaking and I wouldn't call it tour guide business, but outdoorsy tours type thing. But having grown up here in Putnam County, you've seen a lot of changes and people come in and things and being built. I'm interested. So you went to Florida State, you got your education in the arts. How did you end up back here? And not only how did you end up back here, but did you see any of the changes coming back? Both.
Well, I really wanted to stay in Tallahassee, but there either you work for the state or you're in college.
One of the two,
right? And I came back, and then I went to work for a while up in Jacksonville, and all of a sudden, in 1976, they had an opening. That was whenever the Putnam County was using a lot of CETA employees. They would hire. It was a federal program that was like on the job training that they would fund for a certain period of time, and then the local governments would take over the employee.
Oh, okay, that makes sense.
And there was an opening with the county. They had just done the bicentennial, and they found that there was a lot of history in Putnam County
That's
that had not
right?
that had been untapped. Basically, it had been stored over in East Palatka, and so they got the CETA position for me as a county. I was the county archives assistant.
Okay.
And it was to help with the infamous The River Flows North book. I was in charge of taking over the people that wanted to order the books. Then I had to do indexing and research and stuff like that for Brian Michaels as his archives assistant, because he was in charge of the building and zoning in those days.
Okay.
And I worked under him and Charlie Hood. And then they had established what they called the Archives and History Commission, which were the different districts had a representative appointed, and they did things like going out and inventorying cemeteries and stuff like that during the bicentennial. And then I had to compile all that information, type up all the index cards for all the graves that were around and stuff. And I learned a lot about the individuals as I was doing it. And it was a wonderful job. I had it for 32 years, so
You really do know
so
a lot
I
for
walked
doing
into
that.
I walked into a very good position.
Yeah.
I really I learned a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I met some fabulous people that are no longer with us, and learned stuff that I never knew, even growing up here in
In Putnam
yeah,
County. Yeah, same. I've always said as I start to interview people that there are so many things I had no idea about. And the information that you must have uncovered in 32 years, you've got a whole bunch in your head. Maybe one day we'll have a Janice Mahaffey research where we find out what all's in your mind. And I'm glad to have a little snippet of that right now. So you're outdoors, having come back here, and you're outdoors in a different way. Was it around the same time where you were out doing the studies that you were forging your way with the kayaking program or the
yes,
kayaking business?
that's how we met, was kayaking. Well, we're canoeing,
Canoeing. Yes, canoeing. Sorry.
and I was never one for hiking. I hurt myself as a young kid, and my knees have never been the same.
Knees will get you real quick.
Yes, ma'am.
And so, um, having left. Well, let's talk about in your childhood, and we'll come back to having left, seeing the changes. What are some things growing up in Putnam County that you remember as a child that were special to you?
Well, I remember the old well, the old city hall was the post office,
Mm-hmm.
and then across that was where they had the city hall and the fire department,
Okay.
and they tore that down, and then there were some beautiful old homes, all around this area that got taken out because progress.
Mm-hmm.
And some of the families that had been there for generations didn't want them to go. They decided to take them out than to let somebody that wasn't a family member have it. So we lost a lot of beautiful, homes that way.
Yeah, some of those homes in the historic
And
district are incredible.
Architecture of them.
That's exactly what I was going to say. So you've seen the destruction while you created the different homes or different structures.
right.
But my understanding is some of these homes are very unique in their architecture.
Palaca is one of the premier cities in the state that has pre-Civil War and Civil War, that amount, excuse me, the amount of homes that St. Augustine, has the ones that they've remodeled and
Right.
stuff. But ours were, when they did the cultural resource survey in the 80s, they determined that we had just an astronomical number of buildings that would, make us older than some of the other cities around. Of course, Jacksonville burned.
Yeah.
So, and Palaca burned too, but we were saved because Reed Street was was called Orange Street, and it was a dirt road, and the fire couldn't go over.
See, all of us who complain about those dirt roads and what it does to our cars, the dirt roads brought value to us at some point.
It burned the city blocks around it, but it saved going over into the lot of the residential. It burned the commercial.
Right. Well, the building that we're in has burn marks on it, on some of the bricks on I just want to note now that I am directionally challenged. So on this side of the building, whatever side that is, north,
The south.
There we go, south side of the building. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. Yes. Okay. I knew that. I was testing you, Miss Janice. So on the south side of the building, it has those, the fire marks where some kind
Well,
of business
this was
happened.
actually the first brick building that was built after the fire of 1884. It
Mm-hmm.
was known as the Marani Building.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the the first one because it was wooden before.
Right. Right.
But they've had other fires,
Right.
like
Oh, okay.
Kitterly and stuff like that, hardware. I don't know
Mm.
if you remember that as a kid.
Where I don't. I was talking to my dad the other day about Bruner's. I remember that, and oh my gosh, there was another lumber place, and it. I was just talking about that one too. It'll come back to me, and probably after we talk
There
about
was
it.
Cameron's. There was,
Hmm.
there was a lot of them around here.
Yeah. I remember in East Palaca, where the Dunkin' Donuts is now. There was that building. It had the really unique windows. Like it came to a top, and
That was
then
Brunner's.
yeah, Bruner's. But how unique the line of windows are.
That was originally a potato. Whenever they had WPA and stuff like
Hmm.
that, potato processing
Oh, okay.
place.
So tell me some other historical, like were there events or anything that were remarkable to you as a kid that kind of stick out in your memory, things you did here?
Well,
Or?
basically, we had the Azalea Festival, and that was a big to do.
Hmm.
Um, and we didn't have a whole lot. We had across the street was the old Howell Theater,
Yeah, I just learned
and in
about
the
that.
summer you could pay 25 cents to go to the movie matinee, or you could get 6 RC Cola
I love
cups,
it. I just
and
heard that story.
that entertained a lot of the kids. And right up the road, across over here was what they called the New Theater.
Hmm.
It was probably the Fry Opera House, we had opera houses, and we had several of them. We had the Orpheum, and we had the Fry Opera House and stuff like that. But we didn't have a whole lot of entertainment. I mean, when I was a kid in high school, I don't know if you ever heard of Chad and Jeremy. They were a British group in the 60s.
Okay.
Well, they came to Placa South High School and performed to about 20 of us. That was all but showed up for the whole thing, but it
Oh
was
wow,
it was
that's really
but that
special though.
yeah, it was. Yeah.
That's a private concert.
Yeah.
I could think of some bands I'd like to come private concert. That'd be amazing. But the arts, as far as music and theater, were a big thing then. From
Well,
my
St. John's was just getting started in the
right.
60s. So,
But we did have a lot of bands that
right.
would play around too. So
And that was a big thing at Christmas time. That was another thing. You used to have all the merchants. They would have mystery numbers that you would have to go into your like a daily news and get your number, and then you would go to all the different businesses to see if you matched, because you would win a gift if you did. And that was always the Christmas
I feel
parade.
like we have to bring that back. I heard that, and I want to do that so bad. That's amazing.
But it brought people out of the woods from from miles around to come downtown to do the Christmas parade, and we'd have all the different bands, from high schools and stuff. That was a major thing. And then homecoming, you had the big parades. And
Yeah.
stuff.
Now, when you left for school and you came back, was there a lot of change between the time you left and came back?
Not really. The only thing I noticed that there was a lot more mobile home.
Okay.
We had a lot more dealerships and stuff like that, especially over in East Palaca where we live and stuff. I mean, that was there, and most of the old motels that were there, because people would come for fishing, and also truckers whenever they were
Right.
getting the produce from St. Johns County and stuff like that. They would stay in those
Okay.
motels and stuff. They were all sort of coming out of fashion and stuff like that. We had William Penn and the Townhouse, but we didn't have a whole lot.
No Hampton Inn or
No,
things like that.
nothing like
A
that.
lot of locals. All right, so we're gonna fast forward. You've come back. you guys meet in the canoeing arena, if you will. And so, how long have you been married?
Be 45 years this year.
Happy anniversary ahead of time.
Thank
That's
you.
amazing.
Yeah.
And did you go out canoeing together, or
Oh, yeah.
did you cook for her while you were out there?
Oh, yeah.
Of course.
Absolutely.
How do you think I attracted her?
How you wooed her?
She wouldn't have to do anything.
We had gourmets. We would have, pancakes or waffles on breakfast on the campfire.
My mouth is watering right now thinking about pancakes. That sounds delicious.
Steak for dinner with baked potatoes and other vegetables that I could carry with me and cook while we were out and all. So
Yeah. What's his signature dish? What's he do best?
I don't know. He makes a really good meatloaf,
I like a good meatloaf. Can't go wrong with that.
and he does real good on shrimp Creole and shrimp etouffee.
That's what you made for the blue crab folks, right?
Yes.
Behind the scenes. All right, I'm putting my order in now. If you make a shrimp Creole, I love a shrimp Creole. I need to taste Mr. Mahaffeys.
I'll
Shrimp
log
Creole.
that in.
Yeah, that sounds like a dish we need to have on one of the menus locally. Mr. Mahaffey's shrimp Creole. That has a good ring to it. Okay, so you obviously are into history, not only for your job, but you
Right.
went to school for art history,
Right.
right? And you are now giving out history through your business. Has it been a shared passion for the both of you?
Somewhat, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we both got very interested in William Bartram in the early mid 1970s, at 77, whenever they were that was when they did the original Bartram Trail Society of Florida, and then it fizzled out in the 80s.
Mm-hmm.
They took away the funding for it, but it was something that the Southeast and stuff, where Bartram had visited. In fact, this is the 250th anniversary of him being in Palatka
Wow.
in Florida this year, and so we made connections with that, and we were officers in the Bartram Trail Society of Florida that was for the whole state of Florida, but it never really it was taking off, but it never got very far,
Right.
because of economics in the 80s, and I was using my information that I learned from that whenever I would go into the schools and educate for a week or whatever. I'd go give slide presentations of Putnam County and history and stuff like that, and introduce the kids to the Bartram and what he did and stuff
Right.
along that.
And that's a natural marriage of both of your interests, you in history and you in the waterways.
Well, I was going to say, I was impressed by her ability to recall ancient history
Right.
to the finest of points.
Right.
It just was. She was very intelligent to begin with, but it was just and I was just dull, and so it was just. She impressed me so much with her ability of remembering everything.
That's a pro and a con, Ken. You know that.
He knows
right?
it.
'Cause I will tell you, I'm the Ken of my marriage, where I can't remember what I wore yesterday. Nonetheless, there's history facts. I'm impressed that I remember some of the things. Just yesterday, I was trying to get out some phrase about. Oddly enough, we were talking about the Blueways and Trails that Mr. Craig McLean is working on, and he was telling me about and I'm doing it again, and I still was supposed to go back, about connecting the kayaking to the trail, and there's a term for it, water to, I don't know what, I can't remember, and he can get on to me later, but whatever it was, just like now, just left me, so there's always a Ken and Janice dynamic. So, but it impressed you with how much you remembered.
No.
Yep. And tell me, what was it about the Bartram excursion that really hooked you?
Well, Putnam County history.
Yeah.
Uh, the amazing to me, it was just amazing to we have the Florida Federation of
Garden
Clubs contacted Janice and I and said, we want you to come in and we want you to talk about this because they had a big anniversary coming up. Was that what the garden club was doing, and that they wanted something?
No, what originally started it was it started in Alabama with a lady at the garden club.
Mm-hmm.
She approached Earlene Wallace.
Oh, Wallace.
And she, as to have her talk to George Wallace, that was governor, and to see if they could coordinate with all of the garden clubs in the South to be the head honchos, the driving force of it.
Right.
And he contacted all the governors, and all the governors set up a point person, and it was usually the president of the garden clubs.
Mm-hmm.
And ours was a lady by the name of Van Blanchard from Pensacola, for Florida. And they were, of course, with them, anything with flowers.
Right.
You know, that, and he was what basically they say is the first natural history of the colonies. He was, his father was King George III's royal botanist, and that's what brought them.
How cool!
That's what brought them to Florida, because Florida just become a colony, and East Florida was headquarters over in St. Johns County, and they had to go to find out what they could grow, and so all the ones that wanted land patents and stuff like that, and to set up homes in the colony and make money, they would they wanted to know what they could grow and what was viable.
Yeah, agriculture is huge, especially in Putnam County, so that makes sense. And we have I know I don't have the right terminology, but so many plants and natural edible plants. Like, I am floored how much you can eat.
Yeah, but just think how it would have been back then in the wilderness.
Exactly. Oh my goodness. It kind of like going to the produce section of the store, but much bigger, I'm sure.
But they would send the seed pods over to the gardens in London and stuff like that, and then they would have their botanical gardens growing over there, because that was just an inventory of what could grow, and so that I've got this plant. You don't have one of those, but I've got one of those.
Right, right. How cool is that? So he really, I would assume that along with all the history that you have, that you now have an additional layer of that with the Bartram Frolic. So it started in the 70s and then kind of died off with funding in the 80s. When did you see it kind of get brought back to life?
Well, actually with the Blue Ways and Trails.
Blue Ways and Trails.
Okay.
Nancy Harris.
Right.
She formed a committee, and Ken was on it, and then we got involved after he retired, and we went to London. Well, we went on our trip, and we were able to make arrangements with the Natural History Museum in London to see the Bartram, the original prints, because Sam Carr wanted us to bring back his drawings.
Right.
And so we met with the curator, and she was very, very gracious.
Wonderful.
And
lady.
We spent 2 days in the museum and got to see and hold the originals. And then after we got back, she agreed to let us have they were going to digitalize all of these drawings, and we would have the highest resolution of digital drawings of it. And so we were able to procure the Bartram prints that way.
Yeah. Can you imagine, like, just really thinking about that? Like, you're on the whole other side of the continent and studying about something that touched your home all the way over there.
Yeah.
And then being able to really do something for your community that you grew up in by being the liaison, the mouthpiece over there. I mean, you really did just create this exponential growth of it in this community. So kudos to both of you for taking on that task, and thanks to Sam for asking you to do
He was
that,
insistent that we had to come home with him.
right? I want him. You roll
And then
him up
when
and
we
you
called
put
him, we said, "Sam, we got the prints."
Oh, I can
You
only
could hear it
imagine
yelling
that
from
moment.
over in the
They gave us
States.
permission to get the prints.
Yeah.
So was Sam connected with you guys like before you were together? Was he?
Well, I
one of your
went to
friends?
school with Sam.
Okay. So you've known
So,
each other for
yeah.
maybe 20 years.
Oh yeah, at least.
So that's amazing that you kind of band together, and then obviously like you got your passion that you brought from being out on the waterways.
Well, Sam got involved because of Dean Campbell.
Okay. When did it come back to life? What year was that?
It started in 2013.
2013.
It was
Okay.
whenever we started the Bartram Trail. No, we were the Bartram Trail No, it wasn't the conference. It was
Bartram Trail Society.
It wasn't the society. It was the Blue Ways and Trails of Bartram.
The
thing.
collective. We'll
Yeah.
just throw whatever name it was under. You
Right.
guys revitalized that.
We were a Bartram Trail Committee is what we were.
There you go.
Yeah.
The committee.
And that Nancy Harris set up, and we would meet at the county offices, and they helped us develop some of the trails. Then Sam got involved with the Bartram Trail Conference, which was leftovers from the original Bartram Trail Society.
Okay.
They were basically out of Georgia and Alabama. Florida, had not joined back in. And so that has grown since then. And then we had the Bartram Trail Conference here in 2015, where we had an author by the name of Andrea Wolf, who's written lots of things about she wrote about the Bartrams because of their connection in Philadelphia at the gardens and the founding fathers and their loves of gardens and stuff. They were all friends with like Thomas Jefferson, James Monroe, Benjamin Franklin. They were all camaraderie.
Yeah.
And she had written books, and she was our guest speaker, keynote speaker for that. And so we had people. That's how Palaca got more and more involved in it, and we showed them the stuff around the where Bartram had traveled, because they were all just wanting to see the sights, to see the sights.
But she's one that we housed her at our house. Is that the?
No, we didn't have. We housed Lori.
Oh, okay.
She was
another
illustrationist
that we met in
at the museum.
Yeah,
she was there the next day going through the same boxes that we had been in the day before.
Oh, wow.
And nosy Ken goes over, Miss Bartram, what are you doing?
Yeah, I've been asked the same question. I think it's just amazing to think about you grew up here, and I'm sure that, and correct me if I'm wrong, you didn't imagine being so heavily involved in something like this in your hometown. You were doing Renaissance art,
Right.
right? So that your interest, and I've run into another community member who's actually not from Putnam County, but has taken such a great interest in the history, and how now you've connected to this, historical figure, and you've brought this collaboratively, you have brought this attention to the community that you grew up in, and how much rich history from his travels there are, and then bringing education to our youth. Yeah, I love the frolic, which, if you're not familiar with the Bartram Frolic, I will be sure to leave links down below for you to check it out. I'm always kind of shocked. I guess I shouldn't be shocked when I say somebody doesn't know about the Bartram Frolic, because there are a lot of things in Putnam County I didn't know about living here. But that you bring the reenactment of what it would be like in that time period, and sharing that with our youth, and maybe them get interested and one day do the same thing that you've done.
That's what we were hoping for.
Well, I love
That was
that.
part of
Yeah.
the plan, was to teach them our history,
Mhm.
and then let them actually visualize it
Yeah,
in
yeah.
real life.
Yeah.
So
They do. Your reenactors do an incredible job. I think it is so cool to go out there and it creates this like you feel like you're actually in that time period, and it's so cool. Now you guys have children, correct? How
Right.
many?
Not children anymore.
Chil- chil-
Adults.
Adult, yeah. So you guys have adult children, correct? How many?
Three.
Three, right. And did they get to watch this journey of your interest in this
Yes,
stuff?
they were. We were also involved in the sesquicentennial of Florida,
Yeah.
and not
That's a word and a half. Say
Yeah.
that again.
sesquicentennial of Florida.
What now? What
That's that was the 150th
sesquicentennial?
150
I've learned something new today.
year
I've never
states.
said that word.
That you've accomplished your goal for the day is learning something.
Check mark. Well, I've learned a lot, so I got a lot of checks. I'm safe for the week.
But
so.
Ken was put as the chairman of the sesquicentennial. It was the state wanted the different counties to do something.
Mhm.
Well, we did it throughout the whole year. This was in 1995, and then after that, we had lecture series, and being in the archives, I called in a lot of chits.
Uh-huh.
I called up people, that had written books and stuff along that line, and asked them if they would, and they would come and give lectures on different aspects of Putnam County, and in the Florida history and stuff. Like Benjamin Putnam was one.
He was a remarkable man,
Right.
by the way.
We had Mosley. We had Mosley Day,
Mhm.
where descendants of Mosley came in. We honored William Dunn Mosley,
Oh, cool.
and we had stuff about the churches, and we just tried to, and then we wrote a couple of books. We had Our Place in Time we had 250 copies of that book we
The
published.
two of you wrote that? Yeah, right.
No,
Okay.
It was Nancy Albers
Okay.
and myself, and Mary Murphy Hoffman had started some
Okay.
compilations, but we put together, and Nancy did a lot more. She would go to libraries around the area and go through all the oldest newspapers, because we use our newspapers, but there were gaps.
Mm-hmm.
And stuff. We use microfilm and stuff along that line to go through and compile information. And so we did that. We did a couple of other projects. We had the first Florida flag done by the homemakers.
Oh.
They helped us. They gave us clothes for this.
And I still have my clothing
And
that
so do I.
wore
Our dress,
during
I got
the
a dress, and
Susquehanna
he,
deal. Yeah.
they
How cool.
So, and then we were in parades and go to the different communities and tried to hold lectures in those communities.
Did you find that your children were interested in it? Did they?
They had to participate.
Oh yeah, yeah.
They
Not
They-
obligational participatory the activities. But I really think it's neat because I hear a lot from children who their parents were involved in it, and maybe you don't always stay in the same interest, but you get involved. And were you interested in history before, or did she kind of spark that in you?
Actually, I had a great grandmother,
Mm-hmm.
and her discussion with her life, which
Mm-hmm.
was history to me.
Yeah.
And so I always enjoyed listening to her talk because I mean she talked about the horses that they had.
She was born in 1869, so
Wow.
she saw a lot in her life.
Oh yeah.
and saw a lot of history in her life.
Yeah.
And just her talking about it made me interested in the aspect of history and understanding it. And then with Janice and in her ability
Coming home with it.
You're the repository for all of our learned things.
Guess what I learned today?
Uh-huh.
She'll open up a book and whoa, looky here. This is important. This is our one of our connections.
Yeah.
When I was going to be a DAR,
SAR.
SAR,
Mhm.
yeah, SAR, Sons of the American Revolution.
Okay.
It was, we were down to that last link
Mm-hmm.
so I could qualify.
Uh-huh.
And it was, I don't know how long it took, but
Well, I thought I was going by. You had to get all the birth certificates and stuff along that line as far back as you could. But John Robinson helped Ken make the connection, so he got into SAR.
Okay. Sons of the American Revolution. And that'd be interesting for anybody who's, would like to know more about what that is, because we all have history.
Mhm.
I'll be sure to drop a link below so we could talk about that too. So really, you had some interest in stories, and I'll tell you, I was sharing with you guys before we started filming. I've always been very focused on like the moment, and I had my oldest shortly after I turned 20. So most of my adult life, I learned about history in school, but I had other plans. I wanted to be a veterinarian, and then when I had children, and I was focused on just keeping them alive. That's talk about plants. Those children are about as difficult as plants can be sometimes, but just being present in the moment. And I would hear things. I was like, oh, that's really cool. Like, I'd like to learn the history of how things came to be, how it's made, stuff like that. But I never even took interest. And my mom asked me just the other day, she's like, how come you've never asked me about, something historical? And I said, I figured if you wanted to talk about it, you would share it, but I don't really know why I didn't do that. And we made a lunch date to go sit down and talk about history, but in having these conversations, because, I start to envision being there, and I can imagine very similar to you listening to your great grandmother speak about how life was then. It really does spark an interest in you. And then I want to know more. Like, tell me what else is, I'm walking down this path. Who walked before me? So, I hope that we can inspire other people, like you're doing with the children, to start dialoguing about history. And I'm sure there's so many incredible stories in our community that maybe your children don't know, or, that we haven't captured yet. And I'm like even more passionate the more that we talk about it, to get out there and help give that information to whoever can watch this. You don't have to live in Putnam County to appreciate Putnam County,
No.
as you well know. So you're with the Bartram Frolic, but you've obviously taken other interest in history. Give to me like 3, if you could think about 3. I'll take one though. Fact that you find very interesting that you learned about Putnam County along the way. Something that was like, wow. I know you got a lot floating around in there, Janice. No pressure.
I would say Putnam County was really a renowned area in the early part of the 20th century.
Okay.
We had like George Washington Carver that came here and spoke. We had Robert E. Lee have its first grapefruit over in Orange Mills.
Oh, neat.
He was duped into it. He thought he didn't know it was going to be as sour as it was. But
I feel like I had that happen to me as well too.
Come to my yard.
And just some of the people that had been in Putnam County, how wonderful the Putnam House was, and Palatka was a destination. It was a tourist destination from all over the world, and we were headwaters for deep water navigation. It was a port of entry where you could come from anywhere in the world and become a citizen at this port of entry in Palatka, Florida.
Now that is neat. I did not realize that you can come from anywhere and find citizenship.
Well, they changed that in about 1915. You had to go through the Bureau of Naturalization and Immigration. You had to apply through that way, but you would have somebody verify that you were an upstanding citizen. You usually lived here for about 7 years and led a model life, and then they would go before the clerk of court's office and in the courts, and then you would become a naturalized citizen. And when I was going through the old records at the jail, I found where whenever the Civil War, they would have to pledge allegiance to the late great United States and renounce their allegiance to that to become to the Confederacy. They had to
It's like a whole thing that they had to do.
That they had to do that. And there was a lot of naturalization papers. I found out about the Braddock Turner feud that was down in Crescent.
Tell me about that. That sounds juicy.
It was over some pigs.
Some pigs, okay.
Some pigs.
Bacon is delicious, to be fair. So
they had escaped.
I was going to fight about
but
that.
It was also the fact that one had fought for the North and the other had fought for the South, and so there was the animosity,
right,
and stuff along that line. And as a result of it, it made dueling in Florida outlawed. So.
Oh, okay. So we have some local community members back in the day who created an entire law for the state of Florida that no duels shall be allowed. Oh, wow. That over some pigs. Obviously not some pigs.
But I mean, there's so much that didn't get uncovered,
Right. So take me back to where these documents were stored. Like how
whenever they remodeled the courthouse in the 1960s. They didn't have any room. They had been stored down in what was the old basement. It had the old cupola, it was built, it was the second courthouse that we had, and they had built it in like 1909.
Which I learned that off of Google the other day, and that was on our Facebook page about, did somebody know what year you should have participated, what year the courthouse was built, and that was when I learned about the cupola. So continue. Sorry.
And so whenever they moved down in the basement of the courthouse, they took the records that were basically the tax collector, all the old tax books where they would handwrite every time somebody came and paid their taxes, it would be in that ledger, and they had two copies of it. They would have one for the tax collector and one for the clerk, and we found those. They dated back to 1868.
Wow.
And we found, but the only thing they really kept over at the courthouse was like the wills and the probate records,
legal documents
downstairs. They kept some of the law books, but the actual court files and stuff along that line were over there. And then we moved them. They were at the prison farm, which over in East Palaca, and I had to go work over there in the afternoons, and it was very awful.
Oh,
It was like, it was just so much dust. It was like 20 years of dust that,
wow.
and they had gotten wet because we had had a couple of hurricanes and that they'd blown the
Because they're not thinking about
windows
those
open
neighbors.
and
Yeah.
stuff along that line. And in that time, the state wouldn't let you get rid of documents. You had to preserve your documents. And then they built what they called the R.A. Gray building, and they were willing to take any of your historical records and house them. Well, that didn't last long.
I bet. I can only imagine how
So,
that went over.
So we did an inventory of all the records that were there, and then they transferred them to what was part of the public works. There was a couple of rooms that we had to share with the purchasing department and stuff along that line, that we had the clerk's records in there. Well, then they got the building over at the sheriff's office. Whenever they expanded, they moved the archives over there.
Mm-hmm.
As when I was in the archives, I moved about every 2 years. They moved my office around. So we had old newspapers from 1800s even, and
How cool.
and because they would keep them for like public notices. They would cut out the excerpt for the public notice, but they still had the newspaper. And so we went through all of those and microfilmed that and stuff along that line. But the records were I mean, when we found the Braddock Turner, Brian Michaels he was on cloud nine, because he had been looking for that for a while, because he was writing it in The River Flows North,
Right.
the information, and we found the account of how it happened and stuff along that line, and then we found other records there. So
Wow. And, I was thinking when you mentioned it going to the jail, like, who made that decision? They were like, yeah, I just.
no, it was a brick building, and but it was really spooky because they even had the old sweat box down there. They had records down in that, and then the cells. I mean, the cells were really tiny, and they had graffiti all over them at stuff. And every afternoon, I made sure when I go up there, I'd lock the padlock back, because I didn't want somebody
Yeah.
locking us in there.
And that's really, at some point somebody had to say, hey, I need a place to store these. And I was just trying to envision it. Maybe a friend was like, well, I got some room in my building over here if you want to bring the records over.
They didn't do that.
But I was going to say, I'm sure there was a process to it and everything.
And then during I guess it was late 70s, maybe early 80s, we had a flood in the courthouse. The Charlie Hood was the clerk, and the pipes burst, and they flooded the records. So we had to take all the records. We stored them at Walt Pellicier's freezer. So because they could freeze, and all the water would be into ice, and then you could work the ice out after it was done. This was, we had Drew's books from St. Augustine, all the professional people that knew how to do this at the time, and we took them there, and then they had to be brought out, and then we had to go through every page, because they did from transcribing them in hand to making photocopies of it, and they would stick with so you have to go and open up the pages slowly to, so you could read what was on there. So that was a time consuming
Wow.
process.
Well, here's your helpful tip of the day. If you have water damage to a document, put it in the freezer. I mean that, I guess now that I think about it, it kind of makes sense, but I would have never thought to freeze my water damaged documents. So, and you think about how much today we're like a paperless society, right? Everything is digitally captured. But how much, like, not just Putnam County, but in reality in history, like there's stories I'm sure like that, a fire or a flood, how many stories have been lost, and why that even further highlights why it's so important to capture the oral history while we can, because I mean that the dual story, somebody's writing a book, they want to reference this, or maybe it's just like a really interesting story where things can get lost in time in an instant. That was supposed to be a really good clean snap, but I didn't do a good job. But in an instant, so I'm exceptionally appreciative of the time that all of you, and I know that it's not just the two of you. I know you've got people who've helped along the way, but particularly the two of you, the passion and excitement that I really am, and I like history, but have been really energized at what we're doing on this podcast and the work that you've done to bring hopefully this kind of excitement to others in the community. I would love to sit down and really delve into, I loved hearing about your history in the community and how you found Miss Janice and got passionate about history too. But I'd love to sit down and talk. I'll be sitting down with Sam tomorrow, Sam Carr, asking him more about the Bartram Frolic. But, let's get back together and see what more history we can uncover. And if there's anything that you don't want to get lost in the archives or freeze, proverbially speaking, I couldn't get that out. Let's do that. Let's try to get everybody passionate. And if you've got a story and listening to this that maybe hasn't been told, maybe you've got a great grandmother that shared some kind of history with you, be sure to
photographs.
Reach out. Or photographs too. Yeah. So if you've got photographs, old documents, I have seen some. The young Sheriff Taylor Douglas, some really great young photographs of him along the way.
I had some.
Yeah.
She got some.
Yeah. So I would love to see that because you're helping bring the past to the now. And while we've learned a lot from the past, it's also great to go back and know where our roots are and know really the value in this community. So be sure to engage with us. Check out the links below to learn more about the Bartram Frolic and the Sons of
the American Revolution.
The American Revolution. And again, thank you so much for coming and sharing this. And I look forward
Thank you.
Oh, absolutely. You're all right. I do it all the time. All right. I hope you guys have a good one. We'll see you on the next episode.